It's time for the movie rating. Tonight's victim is actor Bill Oberst Jr. that has done many films such as Dressed to Kill, Circus of the Dead, The Parrish, many others. Hello.
Hello, Mike. I want to thank you for having me, and I want to take the opportunity, as I know probably all of your guests have done, to thank you for what you're doing for the indie film community and for giving our little project some exposure. Thanks, man.
Much appreciated. This is all for you, Doug, and everyone else out there, all the artists out there that's listening out there. Thank you, guys, and this is all for you and everybody else I haven't interviewed yet. This is for you guys. So what have we been up to in terms of projects? What have we released so far? What are you able to tell us right now that you are working on right now?
You know, I really hate actors that plug their projects. I know that makes me a sort of an anomaly, but I always hate to be the guy who says, well, I get this coming up and this coming up. But since you ask, and I'll only do a couple, okay? The next big thing I've got coming up that I'm really looking forward to is a sequel to the movie Dressed to Kill, which you mentioned. Which is with Armand Desante, and for listeners who might not have seen that movie, it's about a guy whose blood pressure is too high, and his doctor says, you got to remove the stress in your life, and the stress in his life happens to be other people. So, a lot of killing in that one. And we've got a sequel to that I'm going to do with the same director, with Mark Savage, and we shoot that in January. And I'm super excited about that. Mark actually has another project, which we hope we'll get to later in the year, in 2020, called Circus of Dread. And it's a story set in an old carnival, what used to be called a freak show, where human oddities are displayed. And that's something I've been wanting to do for years. I'm really looking forward to that. And then the other thing I mentioned, TV, that's the film end of it, is Age of the Living Dead, which was on Fox Movies last season 1, and that's also streaming on Amazon. And season 2, we just finished shooting it, and it will debut sometime next year. And it's even better than season 1. It's a really good series. It's vampires versus humans, apocalyptic kind of thing.
I know, of course, that you can still check out Circus of the Dead, and isn't the Parrish still rolling and even on streaming as well?
Yeah, I think Circus of the Dead has a sequel plan. Billy Pond, the director of Circus of the Dead, I think he's one of the great directors to watch for the future of horror, because he really gets the genre. That film is brutal, man. You know, I'm aware that we're just doing characters. It hit me so hard, because my character in that, his worldview is that nothing has any meaning. And to me, that's the most horrifying thing, is that life in the world and nothing has any meaning. And that bad things can happen at any time for any reason, and none of it means anything. After I watched it, I thought, wow, I got to go outside and just take a walk and remind myself that there are trees and flowers and kids and stuff like that, you know? It'll last some time of playing all of these dark characters stick with you, and the answer is yes. Even, you know, whether the movie turns out to be really great, as I think Circus did or not, going to these dark places in your head, it does stick with you, and a little residue sticks behind. It's kind of like painting a picture, or doing a poem, or even customizing a car, or anything that's art. You do a job, but it's a real reflection of where you are as a human being at that particular moment, and you probably can't do that again, because you will never be at that particular point in your life as a human being. That's why all the remakes, you know, I don't know what are your feelings, Mike, on all the remakes? They kind of leave me cold, because we keep going back to the same well. What do you think?
I'm on the fence with that. There is some very rare good remakes out there. I'm going to use Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead remake, and when I use that, is the fact is that he made the story much more interesting compared to the original. And I'm not saying the original is bad. I'm saying, I mean, he took a really good take on it. Like Barbara, the character, is much more stronger, much more badass, and really more interesting compared to the Barbara in the original, which was a vegetable, basically. If it's done really well, story-wise, if you can change the story up and still keep that same element and still make it different, which is very difficult to do, by the way, you can still pull it off. But as far as a lot of these remakes, especially that are coming out this year, last year, and so forth, very repetitive. And I want to see something different if you're going to remake it. I mean, that's the point, right? Remake, change it up. These old films, the original films, they're not expired milk, man. We don't have to keep redoing it.
And that's what we're doing in popular culture, seems to me. Like, we live in a house of mirrors. We're kind of a, if you'll pardon the analogy, we're kind of a masturbatory culture. We just really like our own stuff. And so we don't want to get into anything that we have not already previously proven was something we wanted to get into. And that's adventure. In terms of cinema, it dies, because we're only going back to the same well that we've already been to. And then we wonder why. Well, gee, that was a really great J.J. Abrams, Star Trek, whatever it is, but I'm not fully satisfied. Well, like, dude, the reason you're not fully satisfied is because your soul hasn't been nourished with anything new at all. You're just going back. To me, it would be like going back to watch the video of your wedding again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and expecting every time for it to bring up the same emotions as the actual wedding. There's a point where you need to, like, bring new stimuli into your soul. Anyway, that's what I think.
It can be very stale, and of course studios don't care. The higher studios that have the rights to all these franchises and other stuff like that, they don't care because they know they're going to make...
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're just making money. They're just making money off us saying, oh, yeah, I know that. Oh, Friday the 13th again. Oh, yeah, I know that. And so we go, but then we're not experiencing anything new. We're only watching to see how it stacks up to what we already know. It seems really Hall of Mirrors to me. This is why I love indie film, because if you're dealing with a lower budget, you can afford to take some chances. And the best directors and projects that I've worked on are the ones who said, I don't really care whether this is marketable. I'm going to make the movie that's in my head. That's what an artist does. You paint the picture in your head, you dance the dance in your head, you make the movie in your head, you write the book that's in your head, and then your audience finds your work, rather than going the other way and saying, what would people like, and then trying to make it, which is all that big studio Hollywood does anymore.
Being an artist, how do you keep your art free from political correctness when this is always going on every year now?
I hate political correctness in art. In life, okay, it's a different thing, but in art is about expressing a point of view, and it's a point of view about humanity, and that does not lend itself to any kind of policing about what you can or can't say or ideas you can or can't explore. It's the whole point of cinema. It's a language, a world of its own. I've done things on film that I would absolutely never dream of thinking about doing in real life, but that's the point, is that film goes to sometimes the outer edges of human experience. For me, okay, because of my face, I play malevolence, right? That's what people like to see me do, is malevolence, usually kind of a wounded malevolence. My guy is usually doing horrible things, but he may feel kind of bad about it, but he's still doing it, that kind of mix. I can't rein that in because some of it might offend someone. Sometimes that's the point, is for you to see, my God, there's real evil in the world, and there's real malevolence in the world. Look at this guy. So, I'm glad you asked that, because I am absolutely not in favor of it. On film sets, yes. In real life, yes. But when you get to actually doing the art, you have to go where the art takes you. And it's very fair to ask any creator who's done something that is going to offend someone, what was your thinking behind that? They don't have a good excuse other than I wanted to shock or I wanted to offend. I don't support that. Not for them. But if they say, I wanted to show Huck Finn, is a great example, Mark Twain's novel Huckleberry Finn. It's absolutely full of language which is very, very offensive to us today. It's been banned numerous times since it was written. But what Twain intended to do was to hold up a mirror, a verbal mirror to American society. And he does it. You can't read some of these sentences without cringing, but that's what he meant to happen. So if you had asked him, and he was asked in his lifetime, why did you do that? He would tell you. He had an answer for it.
But do you think that studios are becoming more opinionated against the art of cinema itself than to side with the audience?
Yeah, clearly. I don't know that the art of cinema exists much anymore. I mean, of course, among the bigger names that we still have that love cinema, but Martin Scorsese wrote about this in the New York Times, and I agree with much of what he said. Cinema is about exploring the human condition through a language of visuals. That doesn't have much to do, we own this franchise and let's crank out another one. Cinema's dying. Cinema's very much alive in indie films. But the frustration is that our movies are never going to be shown on the big screen. Like, it's just not going to happen because the movies are becoming more and more exclusively for the big franchises. So my stuff gets viewed on smaller than life, not larger than life, but smaller than life screens and tablets and things people hold in their hand. It's very frustrating because cinema was meant to be seen on the big screen. I think we're suffering from who's in it disease, which is the sort of celebrity whoredom that we have, where the only thing we're interested in is who's in it. Hey, Mike, this is a great movie. It's about this. And the immediate response is, who's in it? And that kills it.
Yes,
it's
it does.
Not a huge name that they can light up and say, I know them. The idea being that if I know a thing, it must be good. And that's the complete opposite of art. Most of the things that are good, I don't know. And I should be open to knowing them.
And when you have that recognition, that kind of type of deal, do you think that it's best to be self-deflect from the audience to maintain self-respect? Or do you think in terms of earning that respect from the audience, so you think it's best to deflect a little bit?
You can't be this thing called a celebrity and maintain your self-respect. I know because I've tried and had a little experience with it. And you can't do it. You become a commodity. And then you're thinking of yourself in the third person. It really screws with your head because there's this thing that's celebrated, but it isn't you. And you know that it's not you. And this is what leads actors to addictive behaviors. I continue to say that red carpet culture, a little of it's okay, but the level that we live it, the celebrity culture we live in, it's not good for audiences, and it's damn sure not good for celebrities.
you have to self-realize yourself as an artist. You're trying to get your name out there, but you can still get your name out there in the most honest way. It's going to be a hard road. It is a hard road.
I think the way to get your name out there is to do work that you believe in and hope that it finds its audience and keep on doing that. I went about it the complete opposite way with some success. I worked my ass off for 10 solid years in Los Angeles. I did every project to get on IMDb and get established and get my name up there. But then once I realized that it was never, ever, ever going to be enough, that no level of celebrity would ever be enough, because people would be saying, you know what, Mike, I'd like to use you in this movie, but I'd like you to be a little bigger. Can you be bigger? Hey, you need to be bigger than that. Oh, that's not big enough. I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to start doing projects that I care about, do my best work, and if they find an audience, great. I hope they do. But I'm not going to pick my projects by, I think that this will find an audience, and I'm certainly not going to take every job anymore. So, yeah, I've slowed down intentionally because of just what you're saying. You put it well.
These independent film companies, they're striving very well in their own world, which is great. And, of course, they are struggling at the same time because they don't get those big budgets like what we see every day. Do you think social media as well as the streaming, do you think this is their shining moment? Because they're streaming on their own networks, their own actual online networks, to where you, almost like Netflix and stuff like that, where you can actually go and get independent films and check them out and buy them or whatever, and having to get their own platform. Do you think this is where their control is to get their own platform in this medium?
Oh, yeah, of course. And there was even a rule, I haven't heard the details on this, but I heard the headline on NPR today. There's a rule that was intended to keep studios from monopolizing distribution that's been repealed. It's been taken away. I've got to read that story and make a note to look into it. But sure, more and more. It's just like with the radio, all media is becoming conglomerated by large corporations who control what we watch, what we think. And we think that if we're in social media, we have the opportunity to express ourselves, but we're still being manipulated, we're being herded, and we're being turned against each other for other people's profits.
It's just that self-recognition of who you are and all the stuff going around you, and then when you get that recognition, it's almost a really bad temptation its own, because if you don't keep that in check, you're going to fall in with a lot of these other well-known actors that have fallen for that, because you're not expressing your art anymore. Now you're just artificial in your art, and that's not good. Even though if it sells, you're not selling yourself. You're not making a satisfaction for you.
In the words of a director I really like, his name is Adrian Corona, and I did a movie for him called This. Very strange, dark art house horror movie, which I love, and I love being in it. But Adrian said to me, he said, Bill, there's two types of creatives. There's the person who creates to get attention, and there's the person who creates because they have to do it to relieve tension. And I thought, damn, that really, really puts it well. They're the people who just want to say, look at me, look at me, look at me. And they're the people who say, I've got to do this or I'm going to go crazy. Those are the kind of people I like to work with.
And I love the fact that this is more a creative outlets. When every artist, director, and so forth has a separate creative art outlet for that, so where they can channel their ideas through other mediums, even if they don't have any control over it. I think that's really a great expressive way, because you can still get your art out there no matter what, because you're never going to be shut out. You're not going to get shut down, because there's always some kind of a path to get to that every time.
Sure, that's a great thing about all of the venues that we have, the places to put a film or any work of art. I mean, it really is unlimited what you can do. But yeah, I think you put it really well. You ought to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? If you're doing this to get famous, stop right now, because you're on the way to killing your soul and probably torturing everybody who has to watch your stuff, because it's going to be awful. Why are you doing this? Why do you feel you have to do this? Can you do anything else and be happy? If the answer is no, then you got to do your art.
It's self-expression. If you don't have your own self-expression of how you want to perceive that to the audience as this artist, it's not going to work, because you're constantly doubting yourself, and you're constantly thinking about how can I get my name out there, instead of worrying about how can I shape this art to where I can get my point across. Right. And having to...
I had this conversation with a person who runs a online influence deal for celebrities. Who wrote and said, hey, look at your stuff, and we'd really like to talk to you about being one of our celebrity influencers. And I was like, I'm not beautiful. And if you want me to influence people, what I would influence people to do is to turn off the phone and to think and to engage more with other human beings, and to think about things that really mean something to them, and think them through, and spend time reflecting. That's what I would influence people to do. So obviously that conversation went nowhere, because there's no money in that, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes a life worthwhile. Like this stuff of our life, we get up, we eat, go to the bathroom, we go to work. These are all just like, these are the same physical stuff that all of us do, but it's how we view life. You view it artistically, you view it poetically. It adds richness and meaning to that. It's not always terribly marketable, but it's what makes life worthwhile, and sometimes you get lucky, and the stuff that you think makes life worthwhile is marketable. That's what the gold standard is.
Experiment, social experiment. If you got to go out and, let's say, for example, you dress up as a really nasty looking dude, right? You got a wife beater shirt on, and you go to Walmart, right? But yet you have the loveliest personality in the face of the world. You look like crap, but you are one nice guy. Like, you would actually give $5 to somebody they needed for something. And to see the reaction, how do people see you as this character? It doesn't have to be a part of the movie that you're involved in. The fact is, this is a social experiment. How do people see you as? And if you can use that as part of your art to show in your film, that you can use that of reaction, to learn reaction.
It's true, and I live inside a face that people make assumptions about, because we're hardwired to view certain faces certain ways. Yeah, it does happen, and you live inside a face or a body or, you know, a social situation where people immediately look at you one way, and it lets you know how silly all the judging by outward appearances is. It's ridiculous, and we're so often wrong.
Acceptance is always wrong, too, because sometimes they accept it in the wrong way, because they only accept it the way they see it as, instead of accepting everybody for what they are or who they are or lifestyle, whatever. The fact is, it's not you. The fact is, you're looking at somebody else that you don't like. And acceptance is good and bad in its own ways. Unfortunately, it's ongoing everywhere you go. But the best part is, when you self-expressionize it as an artist, your point goes very well in the film industry, because you know what you're doing and you know how it feels when you're facing this kind of reality.
Yeah, it's true.
We got a fan question that came in not too long ago, and this is actually from Sean Lutzis, by the way. And he asks, in the film The Parrish, you suggest that you and Jen Hammond use Latin during your final confrontation. What inspired that suggestion? Because it really works.
Jen Hammond is a wonderful actress, and she plays the demon-possessed nun in The Parrish, which is an exorcism thriller from Mighty Tripod Productions in Seattle. It's be coming out next year. And we decided to use Latin in this final confrontation. It made perfect sense because I'm a priest and she's a demon, but also because Jen knows Latin. I know a little rudimentary church Latin, but she knows it, and she's a fan of the feel of ancient languages on the tongue. Adding, even like if it's Old English or a style that we no longer speak, I love the way just the tone of a phrase or a word can change everything. That's why we did that, to perk up the audience's ears, because they don't know what we're saying, but they can tell from the passion what it means. And that's a good actor's experiment. Can you speak in a language that's unintelligible to your viewer, but they still understand what you're saying? That's the kind of challenge an actor likes.
Yeah, it's great expressive as well. Even if no one, even yourself, not quite understand it, but the word itself can mean so many ways of how you can express that word. It can mean saying the word "I love you" or saying "we'll be together." It's the question is, how can you express that in a way that people can understand that, even if they don't understand what it means? It's almost like a body gesture. People can understand.
Okay, and that takes you right back to silent film, which people look at as a joke, but one of my actor heroes is Lon Chaney, who did nothing but silent films. And Chaney's body language and expression showed you everything you needed to know about the character, even without the subtitles. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I often say on a film set, which I got from some really good old actors who told me, said, "Hey, Bill, you get a piece of dialogue you think is too long, just say, can we say this with a look?" He said, that's what we used to say in the old days. So I've tried to revive that. When I've got like a paragraph of dialogue, I go, can I say one sentence, and can we do the rest with a look? And a lot of times, because film is so visual, you know, film is about the camera looking in people's eyes. You can get your whole meaning across with a look in just a few words.
Go ahead and plug in any websites or anything that we can check out right now, or anything that you might be doing later on that we can expect later in the year.
I'm not the best social media person, because I try to write in full, complete sentences, and I always bring up ideas. Like my post today was, it's the anniversary of the 13th Amendment. So my posts never go viral, you know. People can follow me, and I would love for them to, on Twitter at Bill Oberst Jr., and on Facebook I'm also Bill Oberst Jr., and then there's an actor page called Actor Bill Oberst Jr. I like to hear from people. I don't understand emojis, and so I don't use them. I don't use LOL or any of the other, you know, alphabet soup things. But if people like speak in rough sentences and they're expressing real ideas, I really, really like to interact with them.
That is actor Bill Oberst Jr.